Howdy, I'm Grey Pilgrim. Oh boy, let me sit down here. Oh. I need to get a room that's a little bigger than this, I think. Recently I bought this. I've always thought, I've read that the old style, like 17th century clay pipes were much cooler of smoke than a modern one. And it's true, they are. I was curious and I wanted to find out. And eBay's a thing, and so there it is. Anyway, I thought I'd tell a tale. I'm pretty good at telling tales, at least. And if you've been following me a while, you know the one thing that I did in life was I worked in IT. Now, let me get this over here. I'm looking at a glaring light, and it's not really making me feel comfortable. Okay, I hope that's okay for you guys. Anyway, the way I got into that, at the time I was working as an auto mechanic in a Chevron station. And one night I was sitting around, it was, several days till payday, and I was broke. And I'd gone down to the liquor store to buy I think it was a quart bottle of cheap beer. And that was going to be my evening's pastime. Well, walking back, I went by a house that I discovered was the place where an old high school buddy of mine lived, and went, "Oh, son of a gun, I haven't seen you since high school. How's it going?" So we sat down and we shared a beer. And he was broke too. It was days until his payday. But it turns out he was working as a computer programmer. And I said, "Right, what's a computer?" Well, anyway, we were sitting right before I said that. I said, "Well, if I had an extra quarter, I'd go down to Benny's, which was a local pool hall. Benny's was a nice, interesting place. An old black guy ran it, and it was, later on it became a coffee house. And I mean, that particular location was pretty epic in my life. It was in Albuquerque. And anyway, I said, I'd go down and play pinball at Benny's. I never did get into video games as such, Pac-Man and the like. I got into pinball. I loved pinball. I was very good at it. No, I wasn't exactly a wizard, but I was pretty damn good at it. Anyway, he said, "Well, what we could do is go down to the computer center and play Star Trek." I said, "Well, I'd watched Star Trek, but I hadn't heard of a computer game." I said, "Right, what's a computer?" Well, my buddy, he picked me up and took me to the UNM Computing Center, which it turns out it was open 24/7, which I didn't know. Also, a key fact, it had a bathroom. That was also very important to me because, at that point I was renting a room. Usually I lived in my pickup, and I always made a log of all available 24/7 bathrooms in town. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so he showed me this room, and it had a card reader in it, and these bins where you could pick up output, and a card punch. They had a line of what are called 029 card punches, which are a gizmo. You put a sheaf of cards in, hit a register button, and knock a card down across the side, and you go chung 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 like a typewriter. Well, he was typing out punched cards, and he says, "Well, here's what you do. This is the array of the quadrant, and the Klingons are somewhere over here, and you're somewhere over here. And you have to line up your photon torpedoes or your phasers and shoot somewhere an XY coordinate into the quadrant, and hopefully you'll hit a Klingon. And you've got to, after that, they shoot at you, and hopefully they don't hit you." So I said, "Okay, how do you do this?" And he says, "Okay, you type it in here. You put that card with the rest of this deck and feed it into the reader over there." Okay, we did that. Now what? Well, now we wait about 20 minutes. So we waited about 20 minutes, and out came a guy with some 8 by 14 blue bar paper, and my buddy picked it up and sort of thump, 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 thump. Here it is. You missed, but the Klingons hit one of your star cruisers. Oh, shit. Okay, so I went, "So how does that work?" So he patiently showed me how that worked. And I went, "I got it." And so I started doing this, and I said, "Give me some more computers." He says, "I don't have an account to allow you." Back then, you had to have an account on the computer to play with it. He says, "But there's a trick. So we waited until a couple of students came in and ran some program for a basic class or something, or maybe alcohol W, I forget what. But they had a pink card on the front of their deck. And when they were done, there was a recycle bin, and they threw all their cards into the recycle bin. And my friend went over and picked out the pink card and said, this is the job card. It has their account number. And it looks like it's in bin 39. Okay. So you slap that on the top of your deck, read it in, and they run your program, and that account is charged to economics, math, maybe biology, maybe the music department. Doesn't matter. It's funny money anyway, because this is all university stuff. But the computer keeps track of such things if you have a paying account. Let's say you have a small business and you're using that computer to run your business on, your inventory. Well, you've got to pay for that computer time. You do. By the way, to get the cards to read in, you had to put a nickel into this slot, this gizmo. What it was on the wall, old-style Kotex machines from a female bathroom. And you crank, and down would plop a rubber band that held, a handful of cards. And it turns out that one of the jobs that the operators there did was they bundle up cards for those things, and they would sell them. And then at the end of the month, they would take the whatever the haul was and put it into the employee fund for a beer keg, or maybe I think they bought a couch for the break room. It was made by prisoners over at the prison in their prison workshop, and it was dirt cheap, but it was something we could help them out, and we got a couch. Anyway, there's another story. So I spent all the time I would have spent at Benny's. Instead, I was down at the computer center playing games and learning, because you walked out in the hallway and they had this long bench and it had manuals, so many manuals. And I went, well, anyone can read these. He says, yeah. I said, well, they'd learn how to run it. I said, yeah, exactly. So I read them and I learned how to run it. And I got so good at it that the operators there said, hey, Pilgrim, go over and pick up some paper and bring it over to this printer over here. So I would, and I learned how to set up the printer. Well, actually, I knew how to set up the printer because I learned how to run a teletype machine when I was working as a DJ. That was another story. Anyway, after a while, they offered me a job. Actually, long story. I knew that the lead operator, he was a buddy of mine. And one day I was at work changing oil on a big old Lincoln Continental, and it had just come down from Tijeras Pass in the mountains where it was snowing. And I'm underneath this car, taking out the oil plug, when this big glob of oily snow came right into my face. And I went, oh, 6 cuss words. And then the phone rang, and it was my buddy who was the supervisor. And he says, hey, did you want a job? And I said, yeah. And he paid, it was paid more than I was making. And I just walked out of the job right then and there, the mechanic job, and I went and started working as a computer operator. My first job was as clerical specialist grade 2 or something like that, but basically it was a computer operator. And I was learning how to run an OS 360 IBM computer. I found a clip online that I'm going to insert here to show you what an IBM 360 looks like. Kind of cheap. They didn't have much in the way of money for hardware. So what we had was a trick, which was any corporation that would donate us hardware, they could take a tax write-off and we would get their hardware. So we had all the used junk from corporate America. And we didn't have, we had like an IBM mainframe over here. We had CDC clone disk drives over here. They're DAS, direct access storage devices. 2314 and 3033s. Over here we had Datamation and GE Terminet terminals. They were hooked into a Harris Sanders telecommunications controller, which, by the way, used a teletype machine as its bootstrap machine for loading. You'd put paper tape on it, and you'd put the operating system into it. And then it was hooked up on a channel to the mainframe itself. The Harris Sanders was a specialty of mine. it's an old machine, no longer built. It's an antiquated piece of computer hardware history. Well, anyway, at some point, we got rid of the 360. Actually, well, we had a 360 Model 67, and then we had a Model 65, and we ganged them together and ran a OS 360 MVT with what was it? Shared DAS, shared spool, NIH HASP. HASP stands for the Houston Automatic Spooling Program. And basically what it was on one floor was the 67, on the other floor was the 65, and we had a closed circuit television camera on the faceplate of the 65, so that you'd have two operators sitting side by side. One was running this one was running this one. And you had to be just about psychic to keep the bits flowing right. Anyway, after a while, that one went away. By the way, all of these used this. This is a 9-track, in this case 800 BPI. They go up to 1600 BPI. That's bits per inch on the tape, in 9 tracks on the tape. And the tape, you open it like this, stick it on the drive, and then run this through some vacuum tubes and over to the take-up reel. To write to the thing, you know, like the nubs on an old cassette tape, you have this. This is called a write ring. If this is in place, you can write to it. If it's not, you're reading from it. So you'd write your data to one of these, and then you would read it. You know, you take the write ring out, and you could just read it, and you could keep track of your data. I can tell a tale about this particular reel. But anyway, we got rid of that machine, and we got a new 3032, which was an IBM 370 3032. The numbers on the machines were like saying a Ford Mustang or something. It's the model of the thing. That's a 370. It's the next step up from the 360. Well, I'm going to put a little thing in here that I found about the 370 because it's kind of interesting too. Anyway, soon after that, they got rid of the 390,
in Poughkeepsie, where beginning today we'll be demonstrating this System 370 Model 155 to our customers. One way we can show them how well this machine performs, what kind of throughput they can expect, is to run some of their actual data processing job streams. Then have them compare these timings against timings on their present system. And that's exactly what we plan to show you today. But first, let's take a look at the System 370. Considering its power, it's quite compact. This particular system has 1 million bytes or characters of main storage. This demonstration is aimed at showing what the central processor and memory hierarchy can do. We're using input and output devices from our System 360 line, since they are compatible with System 370. Let's go back to the console. This little light is called the wait light. When it comes on or starts to flicker, it is telling us that the central processing unit, the arithmetic and logic section of the computer, could be handling even more work than we're giving it.
Anyway, soon after that, they got rid of the 390, the 3032 370, and they got a 390. When they got rid of the 370 thing, it had a nameplate on the front of it, and I picked it up because they were taking it to the junk land. This is an IBM 370 nameplate. Kind of rare these days, and as a souvenir, it was kind of a fun thing to have. Anyway, and I still have it. Just something I've picked up over the years. And I learned in the process of going from the 360s to the 360 duals to the 370 to the 3090 to all of them. We used a 3084, we had a 3090. Gosh, I can't remember all the machines I've run, but I started out with OS MFT, multiprocessing fixed tasks. Went to OS MVT, multiprocessing variable tasks. MVT with HASP. HASP later became the Job Entry Subsystem version 2, or JES 2. So it was MVT, MVS, no minute. Is it MFT, MVT, then MVS, JES 2. That was where I stopped it. But JES 2 is basically HASP, and MVS is basically MFT, or MVT. It's the same command structure. So you learned how to run each of these things. Sort of like digital computers. They ran Ristus, RT11, VAX, and Unix. Those are the different operating systems that they ran. It doesn't matter the programs. These are the operating systems, the way you plug it and say, this is a tape drive, that is a punch, this is a disk drive, this is how I input with a terminal, and all the commands to tell it, this is the beginning of a run for a program. This is the end of a run. This run, when done, will put the output on that printer. And that's what the operating system does. I learned many, many operating systems. This is long before Windows or Mac or any of that stuff. This is the old mainframe and microcomputer or mini computer days. I learned Wang. I learned VM. I learned AS400. You name it, I've known the operating system. I was very good at it for a long time. It's approximately every 18 months to 2 years, you'd have to learn a brand new operating system, and usually some new languages. I first learned how to program in PL1. Then I learned Algol W, which is a learning language. Fortran, COBOL, those are all the mainframe type ones. Then you get into the stuff, BASIC, of course. There are so many flavors of BASIC. C, C++, Pascal. Oh, there's so many of them. Anyway, when I retired, I threw away my cell phone, and I didn't look at a computer for the longest time. Within 6 months, I was completely obsolete. And I'm completely obsolete now. Fortunately, I get a pension out of it. But, that's why I'm into guns and other things, because, I never studied computers in college. I studied medieval history, but I had the knack for computers. I was a gamer who learned how to play with mainframe computers. And when we went from mainframes into PCs, I made the transition by learning MS-DOS. And I knew MS-DOS better than anybody else around there. But I also knew the old job control language with the mainframe. So I was one of those interface guys who knew the old stuff and the new stuff. Y2K, I made a lot of money then. Anyway, that's just another tale of my life. So I don't know if you like it, but there it is. Anyway, no guns today, but that's what I got to say. Happy trails.